What are we going to do tonight, Brian?
Play some tunes.
If only Huey was musically inclined.
Hi there. This plank was provided to me by both OLKB and Massdrop to review. Let's get to it. Some people like big battle station keyboards that take up their whole desks, and others like the smallest keyboard they can find. One of those keyboards is the Planck from OLKB, Ortholinear Keyboards. The Planck comes in with some nice packaging. Open it up and you get all your components nicely arranged in the box. You get some instructions printed in the box for setting the Planck up. I'm a fan of the box. There's even a small tearaway portion that you can use to keep track of any layout changes you might make. It definitely makes sense, since for a lot of people, this will be their first Planck. Like the constant it was named after, the Planck is small, very small. It looks that way on its own, and when you put it next to other keyboards, it suddenly feels even smaller than it already is. With minimal bezels and a simple design, the Planck is not only a conversation starter, but a point of intrigue. For me, the biggest point of intrigue was the case. Finally, there's an aluminum high-profile case for the Planck. I've been waiting quite a while for this. The anodization of the case is smooth and nothing on this case is outwardly big, sticking to the ideals of the namesake of this keyboard. The edges are nice and rounded without any sharpness, and the case comes with 4 rubber bump-ons. I wish there were slots for these bump-ons to fit on so they'd be more secure to the case. On the bottom, the USB port is exposed with a big cutout, and I'm not a fan of this part, but it looks like this option was taken to bring the PCB and plate closer to the bottom so they could attain the high-profile case without making the keyboard taller. This unit is a prototype, but I don't suspect it'll be any different from the final production models. Assembling this keyboard was easy aside from one hiccup. The PCB and plate sit on 6 brass standoffs. 6 screws to screw the standoffs to the case, and 6 more screws to screw the PCB plate into the standoffs. If you watch my build stream for this keyboard, you'll know the most annoying part was when I was working on screwing the PCB into the standoffs, since these aren't magnetic screws. One mess up and you'll have screws rattling around between your switches. Undo all the top screws, fetch that loose screw, and start over until you get them. The PCB is quality with large thick pads to make soldering easy, although it'll take an extra second for the heat transfer. Speaking of soldering, the only soldering you'll have to do is for the switches, since the microcontroller and other small components are pre-soldered. The Planck supports both MX and ALP switches, which is an awesome bonus. The only option for layouts is having 2 1U keys for the bottom row spacebar, or a single 2U key. I went for the single 2U key. While it's not a highlight of the review, I did want to touch up on the Xda Keycaps. They're die-sublimated PBT and they look really nice. This set is the Xda canvas set, and while the colorway is pleasant to look at, the modifiers steal the show. My biggest gripe about Xda is that the homing keys aren't deep dished enough. It makes it harder to keep track of where you are on the keyboard, especially if you're switching to ortholinear after doing a lot of typing on a normal staggered layout. If this set didn't look so awesome, I'd probably have changed it out already. On my board, I've built it up using Kale Box Blacks. Feels pretty good. Probably one of the best budget linears if you don't feel like lubing or spending more money. Give them a shot if you're on a budget and looking for a simple linear switch. So what's using this keyboard like? It's like an onion or an ogre. It's about layered. It does take some getting used to if you haven't used many keyboards with layers, but the handy little foldable included really helps with learning and remembering the default layout. It's laid out nicely and easy to understand. I'm not a fan of the Dvorak layout, that's an issue I have, but of course that can be fixed with a little QMK magic, and I'll touch up on that magic later. I'm used to switching between different layouts. QWERTY at work, Dvorak at home, and used to swapping between different keyboard sizes. Even the swap to ortholinear wasn't too difficult for me. After around 30 to 45 minutes of swapping to the Planck, I could comfortably type pretty close to normal speed. And I don't think swapping over is too bad. I don't think many people will find it too difficult if they come in using their first ortholinear, if they come in with the right mindset and patience. If this isn't something you're ready for, it might take a cool minute to adjust. So one of the main advantages of a small layout like this is that your hand should, in theory, never need to move away from the home row. Everything should always be in reach and easy to access, provided you've taken time to memorize the layers and where everything is. And if you don't like the default layout, QMK is the solution. QMK, or Quantum Mechanical Keyboard, is a keyboard firmware many enthusiasts use to program their keyboard. The Planck is officially supported by QMK, so if you're quite tech savvy, you can check out the GitHub and learn more. So with everything being in reach, can you get up to speed using it in day-to-day life? I'd say so. It's all about having the right mindset when using the Planck. Do you want it to be your main keyboard? Do you want it to reprogram it to be your gaming board? Maybe a board full of macros and shortcuts? The possibilities are endless thanks to the full reprogrammability of the keyboard. In my opinion, the Planck and the minivan are probably the smallest boards you can realistically use on a day-by-day basis compared to most other small form factor boards. And by smaller form factor boards, I mean anything smaller than a 60%. Honestly, this board probably won't make it in my day-to-day rotation, but I'll be sure to pull it out every now and then for the fun of it, or I might even make it my OBS shortcut helper. The Planck is more than all of this though, it's also a fun little toy. On the PCB is a small speaker for monophonic audio. It's a nice little treat, and all the PCBs being produced today will have this. An audio track you heard earlier in this review is actually a mix created by OLKB's creator, Jack Humbert, who took audio samples of the top Clack keyboard chores stream when I built this Planck and was having fun with the small speaker on the back. So if you're interested in the Planck but you don't know QMK, you should still consider it. The default layout is still very viable for most people if you're willing to put in the work. If you're already in the hobby and considering learning QMK, the Planck is probably one of the best boards to learn QMK with. For me, I have this Planck and a clue board that'll be taking me on my adventures into learning QMK. The drop on Massdrop just ended, but I'm sure it'll be back. And Jack will be stocking up on his store at OLKB for more keyboards. So at the end of the day, what do I think about this keyboard? I think it's one man's attempt to optimize his keyboard's use, the most keys for the space. And it's found an audience who loved that idea and loved the idea of ortholinear keyboards. It won't be a daily driver for me, but I highly respect this keyboard for what it is and what it's doing. The high profile case is the right way to go, and I'm happy it's finally an option to avoid tacky low profile cases. Jack, you've done a good job on this keyboard. It's not the best keyboard for me, but I'm sure it's the best keyboard for other people out there. Thank you for watching.